So we are live. Let me I pull up on my other screen just to make sure it works. So we're not just talking to ourselves. All right. I think we are good to go now. Okay. Hold on a second. We're having trouble streaming to Facebook. Ended or deleted. Oh. Don't pop up.
Do you want me to check on my phone and see if I see it in the group?
Yeah. Can you?
Sure. Let's see.
Keep trying to let you know. It let me. Oh. We're having trouble playing this video.
I don't see it, but sometimes stuff is weird. But I don't see it popping up there.
Okay. Let me. It's the first time I've ever had that happen.
I'm always like experiencing tech stuff, so it's just so normal to me that I'm like, oh, this happens a lot.
All right, remove this destination. Let me see if I can remove it and add it back.
Okay.
Oops. Stop. All right, now it shows. Let's see. Do you want to check on your phone? And let me check on my other screen.
It says it. I don't see it. I don't know. Sometimes my phone is weird. My Facebook is weird, though, the app.
Yeah. Let me pull. Oh, okay. I see us.
Yay.
We are good.
Okay, cool.
All right. Yeah, it says we are live now. Shows us live. Sorry for anybody who's catching the replay. Technical difficulties. All right. So welcome, everyone. I love doing these. This is our live podcast episode before it even goes to the platform. So if you're part of the group, welcome. And I have with me Katrina McGhee. And I am super excited to talk with Katrina about career breaks. And we also had a little chat about intentional versus unintentional career breaks because I have found myself being laid off on an unintentional one and talk through a little bit of that. And I'm super excited too because Katrina is the author of Taking a Career Break for Dummies. So I have my book. And what we're going to be doing is also doing a little drawing. So for those of you who have questions, who have comments that you want to drop in, whether you're listening live or in the replay, for the next week, we'll take those. We'll be able to answer those or see what comments you have in listening to this episode. And then we'll do a drawing so that Katrina will actually have a signed copy of her book and be able to mail that out to one of our lucky group members. So thank you for that, Katrina. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Yeah. So Katrina, I have just a small spiel, and typically what I do on previous podcast episodes is I don't do a lot of insight into who people are, but I know a little bit more about you just because you were on a podcast, Amanda McWhorter's podcast, and so I got to listen to that episode. It was awesome. We had the opportunity to talk and really get to know more about your journey. And then also in thinking about how your journey kind of intersects with people who may be impacted by a layoff as well.
Yeah.
And we thought that would be great to bring you on the podcast. So welcome. And I want to give you the opportunity to just share a little bit about you, your background, and we can get into like what even is a career break. So if you want to just share a little bit about yourself first.
Yeah, of course. So, hi, everyone. I am a career break and sabbatical coach. I have been doing this for 7 years, but it was not my first career. So, my first career was being an actuary in the healthcare industry, which I then used. I went to get a full time MBA and pivoted into market research. So, I had about 15 years of corporate experience when I just came to the very painful conclusion that corporate was not the place I wanted to be. I felt very much like I was on the hamster wheel, kind of grinding it out. And for me, it felt like I needed to create an opportunity to change my life, but I didn't know what that meant. I hired a life coach. Through a lot of work with her, I eventually had this realization that what I wanted to do was travel around the world for a year. The only problem is that I had $1,500 in my bank account and tens of thousands of dollars worth of student loan debt from my business school degree. So I had to make a plan that included savings and what I was going to do for this time. And because I was working with a life coach, I got really intentional about what a successful break would need to be, would need to have for me to be able to become a better version of myself, and not better as in better for anyone else, but better for me, right? Somebody that felt more empowered, that was living a braver life, and that was living in more alignment, quite honestly. So I saved $40,000 in 18 months. I gave 8 months notice at my job. I quit my job. I traveled around the world until I ran out of money, which was about 20 months. And then I came back and I landed 5 job offers in 5 weeks at the end of my break. And that planted a seed for the book, that planted a seed for the work that I do. It was really then that I realized not only was a break personally life changing, but it also I was able to take that time off and come back stronger and use it to position myself in a way that it made me professionally stronger as well. And that was like cue light bulb moment, very pivotal to and foundational to the journey that I then undertook. So I did go back to corporate, paid off all my student loans in less than 2 years, and then became a certified coach and started helping people take this journey. So that's a medium amount about me.
So, Katrina, like the only thing that I had really heard of, probably before I got to know you and your book just recently,
Yeah.
was hearing of companies that offer sabbaticals to their employees after like so many years.
Hmm.
Sorry, my dogs are having a wrestling match all of a sudden. um, but so companies offering sabbaticals after so many years. I
Hmm.
hadn't really heard of somebody talk about taking a career break or just being like very intentional about how they were doing it. Did you
Yeah.
have examples of people who had done that and that's why you realized like, hey, this is something that I can do too?
That's a really great question. And I had only one example, and it wasn't someone that I knew. And that example was Liz Gilbert. And that was it. So in 2009, I read her book, Eat, Pray, Love. And that was a complete mindset shift for me, just in the simple fact that I genuinely did not know. It was not in my reality nor in my consideration set that adults who were responsible and on a track of success, having a job and a career, could quit their job to do something fun just because they wanted to. It was like, that's just my chance was to study abroad and I missed it, you know? So it's like, that's not in the cards for me. The best I can hope for is early retirement. And that was just based off of what I saw. I mean, I did this back in 2011 is when I started planning for it. Instagram didn't exist, right? Facebook wasn't what it was. So I wasn't being inundated with stories about people doing this. The closest I could come once I actively started seeking examples were travel bloggers who had quit their jobs, or maybe like made a pivot where they were creating content, but they were making money. They were just doing it traveling. But the fact that they had had their freedom, some of them had gone on a walkabout or a career break of sorts before they became a travel creator. But that was the closest. That was the closest I could get. It was really outside of my consideration set. I did manage to find one actual human being that we had a friend of a friend in common, and I was able to get her to go out to coffee with me, and I just asked her an insane amount of questions about her break that she took with her then boyfriend. And I was like, how did you do it? Were you scared? What backpack did you use? Like, it was just all the questions. She was a great sport about it. But yeah, that was my only real person I could find.
Okay. All right. And did you have so you said was it 8 or 9 months you gave your workplace
Yeah, I
notice?
gave them 8 months. Hmm.
So during the 8 months, did you have periods of what am I doing? Like I can't do this. Like this is not going to happen and like whether it's self-sabotage or doubting yourself or like did you go through that?
I had a little, but honestly, the hardest part was not leaving sooner. If I had had the money, it would have been nearly impossible not to. So here's what happened. Giving my notice was super scary. I remember I gave it in January after we came back from the holiday season and some time off. And I just remember like my finances were still, there was still a gap of where I needed to be. But I remember thinking, after almost a year of saving, it was steadily increasing. And I was very confident that I was going to reach my goal. And I thought I could reach it in 8 months. So I was really like keyed in at that point. So that helped me have the confidence to give my notice. So once I knew I could actually hit the savings goal, then I was like, I need to tell them for my own freedom. But I was super nervous. But what I knew is that 8 months notice was going to be a gift to me and a gift to them so that they could prepare for my exit and my transition. But it was going to be a gift to me because I wouldn't have to pretend. I did not give two craps about the 5-year plan, the IDP, like any of the things. I was in a rotational program. Like I just didn't care. And if I could just spend time focusing on doing a good job and then be excited for planning my break and not have to do the charade game of like, I'm going to be here for 3 years and this is the trajectory of where I would like to go next. It was just going to save me so much time and help me feel more authentic in that. And so at the end of the day, I was super nervous, but I just was like, I've got to do this for me. I went in, I gave my notice. It was received so well. It was very shocking. It was like I dropped a bomb on my manager, but he was very supportive. And he went to he's like, I haven't experienced this before. I'm going to have to talk to my manager and just make sure like I don't know what the protocol is. And I was like, yeah, you go ahead. And I was just thinking like, I hope they give me a severance if they make me leave. But he came back and he was like, nope, we're all good to go. Just give us a date closer to like a specific date so that we know about hiring your placement. And then at that point, I was excited and the excitement kept building. And so, of course, there were moments where I had like the fear of what was I going to be doing? How is this going to play out? But it was heavily overshadowed by the excitement I had for all the possibilities. And it really was hard those last few months to go to work. It just was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be here. I've like almost got the money. Everybody knows I'm leaving. People are coming up and congratulating me. And I just want to be done.
That is awesome. And you had come back after that break and you said you got 5 offers within 5 weeks.
Yes.
And so you went back to work and you decided to take a second career break, right?
I did. So decided loosely, I can say decided. So the first one, planned, intentional, mapping it out, saving for it. It's amazing. The second break took me. So I had started my business on the side as a side hustle while I was working my last corporate job. And my company was really supportive of me being a coach on the side as long as it didn't interfere with my work. But there came a point where it was actually a disagreement over my vacation and how I was using it and how much of it I was using, which it was all given to me. I wasn't going above and beyond, but they did not prefer the way that I was using too much all at once. And I remember thinking, I can't do this anymore. I have to go be my own boss now. And that was like this huge leap outside my comfort zone. But what was true, what I didn't realize is I was having like a backlash of burnout coming at me from having worked this very demanding job on top of coaching at night, working on my business at night, and every weekend. It was like all hours were working hours. And so when I went on my break, before my break, when I like quit my job and like went into this freedom, I was like, oh, I'm going to find a new place to live, a new city to settle down in, and I'm going to start my business and it's going to be so successful. And it started to feel like a grind and it wasn't immediately taking off. And given that I had been working for so long, sort of side hustling it and burning myself out, I just kind of crashed. And I remember feeling like, I don't know what's happening to me right now, but I don't have the energy for my business the way I need to have the energy for my business. And I kind of don't like the life that I have, even though it's on the outside looking good, it wasn't feeling good on the inside. And I remember thinking, I'm going to go to my happy place. I'm going to go to Buenos Aires for a month because that was the place that I loved, one of the places I loved most on my original career break. And I'm just going to live there for a month and see what happens. And maybe that will get me back. And I remember when I gave myself permission to travel to that first stop, I realized I just want to travel some more and I want to do it in a different way. And it was very spontaneous, kind of impulsive, but it was very much aligned with what my spirit was craving at that time. And I'll be honest, I didn't know it at the time. It made me a 5 times better career break coach because now I had experienced both kinds of breaks, the kind that takes you and the kind that you take. And while a company didn't lay me off, burnout did force me to take a break. And what I realized on that break pretty quickly in Buenos Aires, actually, is that I was suffering a delayed wave of grief from having lost my brother right before my first career break. And so I went through that wave of grief on my break, and that was a life-saving experience to be on a break while I was dealing with, this catastrophic event. But then it had been like 4 or 5 years later, and I didn't realize there was like a second wave that was coming. And being on that break really helped me understand part of why my nervous system was just kind of shutting down on top of the burnout. And it helped me to process some things so I could come back stronger. And spoiler alert, like we all know, COVID happened in early 2020. I started this break I think it was like around 2018. So I had 2.5 years of being able to travel, working part time, but then there was like full on break period for about 18 months. And then the world closed down. And I was so grateful that this inner wisdom that I didn't even know had been like, go girl, go see the world, because you aren't going to be doing it anytime soon once, these changes happen. And who could have known? But I was
Right.
so grateful for that because it didn't make sense to me at the time. And I actually felt really guilty about who needs to travel around the world twice. Like, am I greedy? Am I crazy? But it ended up being exactly what I needed.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And Amanda is saying hello.
Hi,
And she
Amanda.
said, I love your story, Katrina. I do
Oh,
too.
thank
Great
you.
story.
Thank you, Amanda.
So, Katrina, one of the things that you do now is you coach people who are thinking of doing the career break or taking a sabbatical. One of the things that first came to mind for me, and I'm guessing this may be others too, because you do talk a little bit about it in your book, is I don't have the money. Like, and even for you, you said I had $1,500 in the bank. I saved 40,000 in this
Yeah.
amount of time. Like, can you even tell us maybe from your story, like, did you have to change things so that you could do that? Or even with some of your coaching clients, like, what are some things that maybe they did to prepare because they were in the same situation or maybe didn't have anything in the bank?
Yeah, absolutely. So for myself, I had to change a lot of things. And one of the fundamental beliefs I developed through that experience is that saving money is not about deprivation, it's about prioritization. And that was a real mindset shift because at first I just tried to spend less money on everything. And I quickly became very miserable. I remember laying on my kitchen floor crying because I was like so painfully bored in the weekend. And I was like, I can't even go get ice cream because it's like $7 for like an ice cream cone. And I know I could go to the grocery store and get it for free. And I just felt kind of imprisoned, right, by every single thing costing money. Was so like I was pinching pennies so hard that I remember thinking I'm going to spend money to on gas to get to the grocery store. And is this really efficient, or should I just wait until I have more groceries to get? And that was like a real crushing moment for me because I was like, I am done saving. I'm not going to make it. I was still very far away from my goal. But then I was like, what if I use my life coaching that I'm learning from my coach and I apply it to my budget and I make it about being intentional and prioritizing versus just cutting everything out. So I created a line item in my budget called the Exploration Fund, which was a $200 a month fund that I had to spend every penny of, and I could only spend it on things that made me feel a sense of wonder, a sense of exploration. So it could be classes, it could be, I remember I spent 2 exploration fund months worth buying a Vitamix, but then I could
Uh,
experiment like with like, how do I make salad dressings? How do I make smoothies? And it was like that spirit of learning and adventure. And then my life started to feel really good. In fact, better than it did before I started budgeting and saving. And that really helped kickstart things. I also saved every lump sum I ever got: birthday presents, bonuses, refunds on taxes, escrow refunds. It was like if I got it and I wasn't expecting it, it did not matter. It went straight into the career break fund. And that became
mhm.
half of my savings. I saved about 20K that way. So for me,
Oh,
it was
wow.
about prioritization. Yeah, and I would say I've had clients that have the money and it's actually a mindset shift that they need. So it's about being able to afford a break, not being able to like actually pay for it. And sometimes we can become self-identified as savers and we start hoarding money for these increasingly bad worst case scenarios. Of course, it's good to be prepared, but we can't prepare for every scenario. And at some point, if all we're doing is saving for 20 years down the road or these catastrophic things that may or may not happen, we're never really diverting money to our well-being. We're never really pouring money into ourselves as an investment and our happiness in a way that is fulfilling. We invest in our education, right? We invest in training, we invest in a lot of things, but our personal well-being. Like a lot of times we don't really make that same kind of commitment or investment. So that's an important piece as well. So some of my clients, it was just a mindset shift where they were like, I give myself permission to spend this money that I've been saving that I actually have access to, but I keep telling myself it's for an emergency. And even as it grows, my brain comes up with new emergencies that might require more money. And so it's a never ending, right, loop that they're in. And then the last thing I'll say is I just had a coaching call with someone yesterday, and she's like, I don't know if I could save for a break. It's going to be so much money. And when we were talking about things she's currently spending money on, she was, spending close to 20 grand on vacations for an entire year. So she was prospectively booking a year's worth of trips, right? Committed trips, fun trips, vacation, family, all the things. And it was a lot of money. And for her, it felt essential. Like, I need these little gasps of air to like be okay in life and to keep going. But that's a short-sighted gain, right? That's a it's a moment. It's very short-term thinking. And what we talked about was if she could get clear on her purpose and really live into what lies on the other side of a break, it might be more motivating for her to put money towards that longer term goal and her overall well-being because she had the money. I mean, she would find the money, right? But it's like shifting how she was prioritizing things in her life.
Right. Right. And when you talk about a break, because like those vacations throughout the year might be a week or 2 weeks or something like that, what are you typically seeing when somebody takes a career break that time frame is?
Great question. So the average time frame is 6 to 12 months. However, I have coached someone that has taken a 2-month break, and some people have taken almost a 2-year break similar to myself. But I would say the average is 6 to 12 months. Here's one fact I'll drop is that I've seen this, and I've also heard other people in this space that coach other people on similar topics kind of mirror this back. It takes about 3 months or 90 days for you to really decompress from work, especially if you have never taken a break before. And honestly, it can take even longer, but you kind of need 90 days to really be present to like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm on a break. This isn't just an extended vacation. And
Right.
so having that time lets you rest, restore, and then start living into more of that exploration and that learning and that adventure and that connection and those more fun things where you still have, like, if you've spent 3 months kind of like, transitioning into that, you still have another 3 months to enjoy it. And then to also think about transitioning out and re entering into the workforce.
Definitely. Definitely. So you had talked about with your career breaks, most of the things I have the sun like coming in. I'm like
Oh,
chasing it
yeah.
away. But for your career breaks, you did a lot of travel. Um, with the clients that you have seen, what are some of the other things that people have done in their career breaks? Because it's more than just a travel. Like other people have different things that they do. What are some examples that you could be able to give?
Yeah, so many things. So travel for sure is one. I feel like you get to experience travel in a different way. So that's all I'll say about travel is that most people know what a vacation is, but
Mhm.
to be able to, for example, like I did, go to Buenos Aires for a month, have no plans, and just absorb more of the local culture, go to a tango class, really explore neighborhoods, one neighborhood at a time. You get to learn a sense of the place and like get it into your system in a way that's completely different than coming with an itinerary and agenda on a vacation. But outside of epic travels and awesome slower travel experiences, my clients have done all kinds of things. One client started helping his neighbor with beekeeping and chickens, and then decided to like get his own chickens and became
That's
like
cool.
a chicken haver on top of being a nurse. It was really a funny story. And he's, like he's getting more chickens. And so that's awesome. One person actually fostered a child. And so she used her break to really lean into that experience and give herself the space to like take care of herself and then to bring this new person into the world, into her world. And that was really special for her. I've had clients that have taken classes. One of my clients did a fellowship in the industry on a topic he's really passionate about within his industry and was able to make a pivot within his industry to a different type of role
Mhm.
after the fellowship because he grew his network and he had this other experience he could put on his resume, which was awesome. I've had a client who has written a fiction novel and been able to pitch it to publishers in her time off. And I've had some clients that spend time really reconnecting with people they love. So investing in spending more quality time with maybe aging parents, maybe their children, siblings, just their community in general, volunteering, but basically pouring into and expanding the connections that they have.
I love it. So when you and when others have transitioned, because you talk in the book too about transitioning out of your career break
Yeah.
also and what that looks like. I'm imagining people struggle a lot with that. Like on one hand, I could see where maybe you're relaxed and like you feel really great from this break and from what you've gotten to do that's different from like the day to day. But then also like the stress some people feel of a Sunday going back to work on a Monday. Like, so how have people bridged that and how have you helped people get through that?
Yeah. Some people have their next job in mind if they're taking a short break. So in that case, the transition, right? So I did have a client that was a senior leader. He accepted a role as a CEO at a different company. So he knew like I have 2 months only and then I will be starting this new job. So if you know that, you can design that with the end in mind, and the transition is much more about just wrapping up your break experience, reflecting on what you've learned and thinking about what version of you want to bring into this next career or this next role, right? That's like pretty straightforward. For other clients, it's like what you described, where there's some internal resistance. You have unlimited freedom on a break, even if you have a family or some obligations. The level of freedom you're experiencing might not be 100, but it's a lot higher than you're experiencing when you're, on the hamster wheel grinding it out and working. And
Right.
so because of that, the idea of going back can actually be a stress trigger for some of my clients. And there's this resistance of, I'm going to do it, but I really don't want to. I actually suffered with this myself. So, one of the most important things you can do is think about, what is my goal in going back? Because similar to planning for a break, it's helpful to have an intention and to know the purpose. So, if you know why you're doing it, it makes it easier to narrow in on the right job opportunities. And it also makes it easier to show up for this next challenge. So, for me, when I got clear, my why was, I want to be debt free. I want to pay off. I want to find a job that helps me pay off all my debt. I don't want to hate my job. I don't have to love it, but I don't want to hate it. And I want to pay off my debt as fast as possible so I can buy my freedom to be an entrepreneur or do anything I want and never have debt be a consideration factor in any of my employment decisions. So that helped me know why I'm doing it. It helped me get my attitude on the right track because it was not in a good place right when I came back from my break. And it also helped me narrow in on the right kinds of companies, right? So if paying off my debt is a goal, I have salary requirements with that. And I also know I don't want to hate my job. So I didn't apply to any jobs that I felt like there's no reason I would like this job. So that really helped me, show up even more powerfully for the jobs I wanted and avoid the ones I didn't. And I would say just the other experience I've seen with the reentry is sometimes my clients have gone through, and especially people who haven't worked with me, have gone through their break and they've had something nice happen, but their brain starts panicking about money. It starts panicking about falling behind. It starts panicking about going back to work. In that instance, they are prematurely trying to exit their break. So I have a section on that in my book, questions you can ask yourself to reflect on. Is this premature or am I really ready? Because a lot of times your brain is like, you're ready, get out there. What are you doing? It's all going to like be for nothing if you don't hurry up. And it's like, that's actually not true, right? But we feel like it is. So we sometimes head out to that job board before we're really ready to start looking. So you want to make sure you're ready. But when you are ready, whether it's because you financially just have to or because it's that time, it's approaching that time, getting clear on your 3 non-negotiables is a really great transition step to be clear about what you are willing, like no longer willing to accept, and what you absolutely must have in this next role so that you can transition into a life that you still love living. Reflecting on your break and what you've learned from it and what parts of it you want to take, even if you have to adapt them a bit, is also really powerful to know consciously before it all comes at you. I want to be a person that goes to bed at 10 o'clock because, man, do I feel healthy when I go to bed at 10 o'clock. I want to be a person who's not answering emails on the weekend. I really want a job that lets me have boundaries and lets me work on a schedule that's flexible for me, right? As examples. So it's important to know those things if you want to set yourself up for success.
Yeah. And I need to go back and read that part of the book specifically with those questions because, and you and I talked about like one of the things that I saw for myself being laid off is being on an unintentional break. And I have pivoted and looked at, going into my entrepreneurship full time.
Yeah.
But I do find myself like, oh, maybe this is like a short-term thing and like let's go back and find like the job, the money, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And it's like I keep having to like pivot myself back. So being able to ask those questions and think about like what are those important things and why am I in this space and staying in this space for now?
Yeah, and I think it's helpful too, like, if someone's in your situation too, Tracy, I think it's helpful to also have, kind of like red zone numbers is what I like to think. So it's an agreement you make from a very grounded place, not when you're in a spiral of like, "Oh my gosh, do I need to be out there?" Right? But like from a grounded place and feeling possible, everything feels possible. Like, what is the red zone number on my savings account? What is the number where I start to
Yep.
feel genuine tension, separate of brain freak out? It's like, this is a number that dictates it's time to maybe look at jobs, right? It's time to, if your income isn't doing what you want it to do, it's time to look at other alternatives to like call in more income. And with the timeline, it can look like, you know what? I recognize that it's going to be an up and down journey, but man, I want to give myself at least 90 days of just being really in my business and doing it from a place of loving what I'm doing and giving myself full permission to be here and not worrying about if it's making money, but just doing it for the experiment and answering the question of, what could I have done if I had given myself 90 days to just focus on this idea I have that I want to bring to life, and making that agreement, right? Then when your brain wants to freak out or prematurely exit, it's like, no, no, that's on October 7th. On October 7th, we're
Yeah.
allowed to exit, but it's not October 7th. I'm going back to that commitment that a very grounded me made. So I think having those, guardrails in place can be
Hmm.
helpful because it's like an agreement or a promise and a commitment you make to yourself from a rational, calm place. Whenever your brain gets fired up, it's kind of like, oh, I guess we did make that agreement.
And that is it. It's like those reminders because you are going to have those moments where you're like,
Yeah.
start to kind of freak out and maybe I do need to go this direction. And like you said, no, I said I would do this for this amount of time. I'm good. And I
Yeah.
like what you said about the numbers too, because I even looked and said, okay, this is the time frame that I could go until, and I actually subtracted 3 months. So it was 3 months sooner. Like this is when you need to start
Yeah.
looking if things aren't going the way that you want. And I have to keep reminding myself of that.
That's yeah, and it's the thing, right? Like, I have clients and I've met people who have a lot of angst, and then when they do the numbers, I'm like, "Have you looked at your numbers?" And they do the numbers and they're like, "Oh, I actually still have lots of money left." And I'm like, "Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do." But they would
Yep.
swear, right? And it's because we
Right.
get used to seeing that drip, drip, drip. It's kind of like a drug for us of safety. It's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's coming. I know it's coming. I know it's coming." It's a steady drip. And when you don't see it increasing, but it is actually decreasing, it's just the feeling of that can be so unnerving and so ungrounding that your brain starts telling you stories that just aren't true.
Right. Right. Absolutely. All right. So, Katrina, I want to wrap up here in just a bit, but I wanted to see is there anything that maybe we didn't touch on that you want to touch on um, specific to career breaks and sabbaticals?
Yeah, just one thing I'll say specific to this group of awesome humans, whether it's intentional or unintentional, it can be hard sometimes to give yourself permission to take a break, period. But if it isn't something you chose, it can be even harder to give yourself permission. But I want to really highlight the idea that if you can reclaim your power in that and decide, even if it's 6 weeks, right? Even if it's 4 weeks, but I'm going to take an intentional break, even if it's a mini break for me. And I'm going to set an intention of what I would like to focus on in this time, even if it's just complete restoration or a health reboot, right? There's no right or wrong answer. You will then be able to tell a very compelling story when you decide to come back to work. And so, part of what I talk about in the book about having a successful reentry is you have to hype that break, right? It's there. Luckily for everyone here, like, breaks are becoming way more relevant and mainstream and normalized than they were when I did breaks, right? LinkedIn has listed over 1 million of them through their career break
Wow.
feature. And so you want to tell a story about how that break made you better, and not just career better, but like restored, rejuvenated, inspired, motivated, right? Those things really matter too. And so the idea is if they have an empty hamster wheel and you're coming in to take the place, right, of this empty hamster wheel that needs some
Right.
turning, and all the other hamsters in the room have been running for years and never taken a break. And you have all the same experience. You're great at running on the wheel, but you've had a break, even if it's a mini break. You are going to jump on that wheel with a big smile on your face and be like, I'm here with a purpose. I know why I'm on this wheel and I'm restored. I'm energized. I've rested. And you can bring that kind of energy to the job. So I just want to encourage people, whether you intended or not, to just think about claiming some of that time for you and not spending it, maybe obsessively or even passively job searching, but to really
Mhm.
just pour all of that energy into yourself so that you can then have an amazing story about what you got out of your experience and how you use this time to benefit you, which then benefits the company or, benefits the role and the team that you're coming back to.
Right. And another thing to add to that too, from the career development perspective, is I've talked to a lot of people with a resume that were afraid to list a career break.
Mm.
And I'm like, you know what? You did like refresh, renew your batteries, like all that kind of thing. And you probably leveraged some skills during that time too, whether
Yes.
they're related to what you did before, what you're going to do, or it's something totally different. So I would say, from a hiring manager in the past perspective and just recruiters, I don't see that as a negative thing at all. And like you said, it's you're ready to jump back into that hamster wheel, you're ready to go, and you have a lot of the same experiences and skills as other people.
Yeah, you bring all your great expertise and your network and your years of experience with you. That doesn't go anywhere. But you also have a full battery with which you can, pull from to do the things you need to do. So I love that just highlighted that. I think it's an underrated viewpoint, but even ChatGPT, the simple ChatGPT tool, even the free version, if you could put down bullets of what you've done on your break, it can help you massage it in a succinct way where you can create bullet points that sound right effective. Like it's like, okay, now I can summarize and articulate in a way that a corporate might understand what I've done on this break. But there's just no reason to not like lean into that.
Right, right, absolutely. All right. So, Katrina, we are going to be giving away a signed copy of your book. I'll hold
Yes.
that up again. So, anybody that has any questions, any comments, any thoughts based on this episode as you listen to it in the next week, please submit those. And then I will get back and Katrina and I will announce who the
Yeah.
winner is. And, Katrina, before we go, I wanted to give you an opportunity if somebody wants to follow you on social media or maybe reach out to you and get some coaching or get some insight, where would you recommend they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Definitely reach out if you are interested in connecting. I have a free resource that's 45 epic things my clients have done on a break. So it talks about some of the things I talked about here and a bunch more
Yeah.
awesome things they've done. I'm happy to send that to you. So if you just reach out and connect with me and tell me you want it, I will send it to you. But I love being connected. So yeah, come find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Katrina. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing about your own experience and the experiences of those that you've coached and just sharing more about career breaks and like what that could look like and what great opportunity that is for people.
Thanks, Tracy. I loved it.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And we will catch you on the next episode.